Let's start. Um, well, good evening. Warm welcome to the second of our webinar series around, the concept of women leadership that we've been having. Uh, Overwhelmed with the kind of response and feedback we had the last time. And many of you all have written in with your own reflections and all that. We really appreciate the feedback we got. And we will be speaking about a little bit of that during the course of this webinar. For some of the people who are joining in for the first time, in fact, we were talking this morning that the format that we have is not a webinar. And really, we're going to, since we already called it a webinar, we're actually going to change it. It's not a webinar. It's a contemplative dialogue or a contemplative conversation. So
it's a web samvad.
Web samvad. Yeah. We're just creating a space for all of us to just sit and have a dialogue about issues that concern us, issues that concern all of us in the organizational space. And that's been our attempt. So entire structure of the webinar has been created like that. So we don't come in here with answers for all the questions you may have. We pick a particular topic, we put our thoughts together, we reflect on that topic, we invite people to come in and share what evokes in them. We break you up into rooms where you can discuss within a group and then share it in a larger context. And that's been the energy that we've always tried to create in this space. So we take a lot of pride in the kind of work we do. So that's the way that today's webinar is going to be structured as well, right? Just to speak about what we covered the last webinar, we spoke about stereotypes, women's stereotypes and leadership. That was a broad topic under which we spoke. So Neeraja took us through her own experiences. She shared stories about where she faced stereotypical behavior in the family, in the individual spaces, in organizations. Raghu brought in the perspective of the archetypal energies versus stereotypes and why it's important for us to not look at gender, but the human being and the archetypal energies that play out as a human being. And that's far more important than getting stuck with these stereotypes. And that's what the entire conversation about. Where we left with was an invitation for all of us to look at reflecting on some of the conversations we've had. And so people have written, like I said, people have written back with some of this feedback, some thoughts and all that. So we will get to hear from a few of them, right? But before that, just a quick thing from Neeraja and Raghu. How are you feeling, Neeraja? How are things around there?
All good. I think it's 55 days, lost count of it since I've stepped out, literally stepped out. I've been very, very cautious with the lockdown. There are days when, you feel a little depressed, but it's, sessions like these which kind of energize you again and then you're back to normal. So far, so good. Thank you, Vivek.
Thanks, Neeraja. Raghu, Kotagiri must be beautiful as ever.
I am sitting in a lovely place, no problem. I haven't missed a single day of my walk. And anyway, Sashi and I love this quietness, so there's no problem at all.
Great to hear that. So today's topic is around the idea of the glass ceiling and leadership, right? And so the way the webinar will be structured is Neeraja will share her own perspectives of what some of the stories, some of the experiences she had. Thank you also for all the questions that have come in. We've kind of gone through all the questions and we will try and cover as many of these questions as possible. So like I said, Neeraja will start off the entire conversation by reflecting on her own journey and experiences around this area of glass ceiling. Raghu will then share his perspectives around that. And then we will then break up into smaller rooms. Each of us will go into smaller rooms, reflect, share, and then come back and have the discussion over a larger group. That's the structure. That's the reason why this webinar is an hour and a half long, so because we want to create that space for us to have this conversation. So we're not sitting here with all of us trying to know the answers. It's not one-to-many kind of a conversation, but it's, like I said, a collective conversation, right? So before we go on to this new topic, thought a few of you all had written to us saying that, can we share some of the experiences that we've had? So I'd like to invite a few, maybe 3 or 4 people to share. I'd like you to keep it short and crisp, maybe 30 to 45 seconds, close to a minute at best. But if you can share some of your experiences, it'll be great of working with what were some of the conversations you had, your reflections and all of that. Anybody likes to go first? Ahmed, you wanted something to share from last time? You're on mute.
Yeah, was that for me?
Yeah.
Okay, yeah. Yeah, so for me, I've kind of, in my own sort of experience, in my own sort of engagements in the wider world, which includes obviously a very large part of it is women. In my sort of interactions and my relations and so on, there has been this sort of, there has been this issue very strongly of the sense of sort of oppression, injustice, and very historical kind of sense of injustice, which I feel kind of brings up so far, meaning I've experienced a kind of a lot of sort of angst and rage around that. And the session last time kind of brought me in touch with how really how despairing these kind of engagements invariably are, in the sense of men invariably kind of either end up kind of reinforcing the oppressor role, the gatekeeper role, and it's difficult to often get to a place where men and women kind of see each other as allies in some way, because there is such a lot of sort of historic baggage, and often the engagements are also sort of, it becomes a very political space, a very politicized space. And so for me, the whole archetype thing really gives a great chance for release from that kind of very warring space. Okay.
Absolutely.
And so for me, as I mentioned in my reflection, that otherwise it's a very despairing kind of, very gloomy, despairing kind of ambience that gets created, where there's, nothing can happen really, unless 2,000, 5,000 years of injustice can somehow be undone or avenged for, or something like that, So this is a very hopeful, the archetype becomes a very hopeful sort of relook at what can be, what can possibly be kind of done to release ourselves, and which includes men also. Okay, releasing men also.
Of course.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Thank you so much, Ahmed. Tejasvi, you wanted to share?
Hi everyone.
Hi.
I completely agree with Mr. Ahmed sir, and so this is my takeaway. I'm sorry, 1 minute.
Hey, it's fine. It's fine. Yeah, don't worry.
Yeah. So I have 3 kids at home, and I have had a long break, career gap. And this webinar had really helped me in bridging that. It connected me to the world. And I really like the way of connecting to define oneself through archetypes of Pandavas. Thank you, Raghu sir, for presenting it through Pandava Mandala. And it is insightful to see a bigger picture about how stereotypes can be mitigated for the acceptance of one's personality and to drive more responsibly. And thank you, Nirja ma'am. Thank you, Vinod sir. Thank you, everyone. So this is my takeaway from the webinar.
Sure. Thanks, Tejasvi. Shivkumar, you had something to share?
I saw the video recording since I missed last week. Couple of points. One, reflections is the idea of a hero of a householder, if I can use the word grahastha. I think it makes me to realize also in terms of the kind of a responsibility today the householder need to have. It's not that I can be freakish and do certain things, and I need to take care of that entire ecosystem and contribute meaningfully. Suddenly, the awareness or the kind of responsibilities one has to have, or I have to have towards also the well-being of the society and the context I live in today, it was very profound. Second one also, when I looked up at the, the archetypal energies, also one, if I just slightly go behind the archetypal energy, there is also a divinity in each one of us. And when I get in touch with that divinity through the archetypal route, I think it gives a lot of space and inner calmness and solitude. And from there, the reflection of the world, or looking at even the transactional world, I think acquires quite a lot of meaning. I think that way, the route through the archetypal energy is phenomenal. I thank Raghu and for all the hosts for that. Thank you.
Thanks so much, Shivkumar. I think we have time for one more reflection if there's
Sunita
anybody else.
Vikram who's raised her hand.
Sure.
Yes. Hi, Sunita.
Hi.
So I think one question I have when we think about women and the glass ceiling is whether, well, I think it's not about women versus men. I think it's women versus women, and getting to think about what is your self-limiting belief. As women, do I believe there is a glass ceiling? And am I not going to see beyond that? So I'm curious to know some thoughts about, at the end of the day, there are people who go beyond the glass ceiling, and it just takes, if I have created a story in my mind that there is a limitation, am I just going to turn up in the world and turn up in my different spaces to experience what is already the belief in my mind? And so I think the answer comes from the inner dialogue and the inner chatter of women when it comes to having some of those self-limiting beliefs.
Thanks, Sunita. I've been wondering whether you overheard or you would read our minds, or because it's exactly one of the things that we're going to cover during the course of the conversation. So on the note, I think it's great, Neeraja, I think, to begin our conversation. Right. So over to you, Neeraja.
Thank you. And thank you, Sunita, for leading us so beautifully into this topic. I just have a few slides, not to bore anyone, but I thought it'll be good to anchor, the points that I'm talking about with a slide in front of you. Did I have this share screen? Do I have the option to share? Yeah, I have the option to share.
Should be.
Yeah, I have it. So let me just share my screen. And welcome everyone to the second session in this series. And I thank all of you to have taken out prime time, as I call it, 6:30 to 8 on any evening is definitely prime time for all of us. And if you're willing to spend that on this important piece of conversation, it's wonderful. So you're able to see the screen, I guess. I will just turn off my video and I'll come back, on video mode once kind of stop. Finish with this discussion. Okay, so the question that we are going to mull over today is whether the glass ceiling is a perception or reality. And let me start by saying that I'm not going to give you the answer for this, and it's for each of us to kind of reflect on this question based on whatever we speak and discuss today, and then after we get back, later in the evening and over the days. But I want to start off with a question that all of us need to answer for ourselves, which is, screen sharing has stopped. I'm sorry. Let me see why that happened. For some reason it doesn't. Let me try. Okay, so some of the questions that we got started from what is a glass ceiling? How does one fight or break the glass ceiling? Is the glass ceiling in our minds, or it's in the minds of our superiors, could be your bosses or whoever? Are there women who have fought the glass ceiling? Is it about identifying our own glass ceilings and mindsets? What is a glass cliff? That made me do some research about it, but there were some questions around it. Going back to, does it really exist? So I thought, let me just answer the question, what is a glass ceiling, just in case, some of us are still figuring out what this topic is all about. Definition of a glass ceiling, when I Googled this, it says it's an artificial barrier that prevents women or any other minorities from being promoted in their careers, in the hierarchy, in the organizations. And specifically, these are difficulties faced by women in the conversation that we're going to have today when they are trying to look for higher roles in a male-dominated hierarchy. So this is what the definition of glass ceiling is. So we will in some ways kind of answer these questions through our conversation today. But the first point that I would like to speak about is ambition, because if you are trying to reach whatever it is, a glass cliff, a glass ceiling or whatever, what is the definition of ambition for each of us? Okay, and that is what kind of shapes our future. So I want to narrate a couple of things here. So I was listening to an interview by Vinita Bali, the ex-MD of Britannia, and she was saying his ambition to become a CEO. If that were the case, then I don't think we have as many companies, as many people that we have around us, women alone, men, women, everyone. Or you go around starting your own company and name yourself as the CEO. So is ambition about that particular position in an organization, or is ambition related to what we want to achieve in our own lives and our holistic lives? So it could be that I want to be the best teacher, or I want to kind of run an NGO. So what is ambition? And this is something that I want everyone to reflect upon. And the point I'm trying to say is chase your own dreams. Where do you want to be? And what is the kind of impact that you want to create is what is your ambition. And not looking at what somebody else has achieved or reached, and hence, okay, I think that's possibly where I need to. And hence probably you kind of look at it as a goal where you see a glass ceiling appearing. So I also want to narrate a story which I read somewhere. This is about this lady living somewhere in rural Assam, and she always wanted to wear salwar kameez, okay? But she got married into a conservative family, and she always wore saris as long as her husband lived. And husband passed away after a few years, and then she thought, okay, maybe let me now try and wear a salwar kameez. And then she thought, okay, she has a young son, and the rest of the community will say, look at her, the husband passed away, and now she's trying to become fashionable. So she continued to wear saris. And then the boy grew up, and then he went away to do his college education. And then she said, now I'm going to wear a salwar kameez. I know exactly what material it is going to be made of, what color it is going to be of, what style I'm going to have, and who is the tailor who is going to stitch this. I am going to wear a salwar kameez in the next week. So is that an ambition? For me, I think that is an ambition that may not be necessarily an ambition for all of us, because we probably overcome that is, a small aspect that we may say about how we want to dress up. But it is about chasing your dreams and where do you want to be in your lives. And that is the starting point of any discussion around glass ceiling, or what you want to achieve. So a few things that women need to kind of think about and maybe do differently, and I'm generalizing it here, but this is what research has said. Many women leaders who have achieved whatever they wish to achieve have said, and some of the things that I have experienced and observed. And I thought I will probably spend some time on these aspects, and then we can lead it to the conversation that we're going to have later. So the first thing that happens with women usually is that there is a gap in ambition, which kind of stems from the fact that there is lower career confidence. So I've just put some quotes from women achievers, and I'm not going to read that, but what is it that I'm trying to say when you are talking about lower career confidence? Men are more confident across all age groups, with 70% of men having high or quite high levels of self-confidence compared to 50% of women. So this is research and data, right? Half of the women managers admit to feelings of self-doubt, but only 31% of women do. So what usually happens is, this is the lack of confidence which is evident in women's more cautious approach to applying for jobs or applying for promotions. 20% of men will apply for a role despite only partially meeting its job description, but 14% of women only will apply for that particular role. So climbing the career ladder, all of us know, is notoriously competitive, and women's hesitation in applying for more challenging roles inevitably puts them at a disadvantage. So that's probably one of the aspects why you may feel that I'm not able to reach there, or women are not necessarily able to reach, or as many women are not able to reach as, you know, the rest of the men are. So the point that I would like to leave you all with here is take a risk. And for sure, it almost pays off. And if it doesn't, then what's the worst that can happen? Let's move on. But that is something that you need to reinstate in yourselves in terms of building that confidence, so that the gap in the ambition never comes. And that ambition again goes back to what it is for you and not for the rest of the world. The next thing that I again look and see around me is the career clarity that women have. And I talk about it in terms of career intentionality. Are you really intentional about your careers, or is it that, okay, fine, I will do whatever comes my way? Or this role came up, somebody asked me to do, so I picked it up, and let's see where it takes me to. So absolutely, absolutely important for you to know what you want, where you want to reach. Like that lady, the story that I said, she knew that she wanted a salwar kameez, she knew who's going to stitch it, she knew what cloth, what material, and all of that. So are you that intentional about your career? So men generally seem to have a greater clarity in career direction. Male managers had a fair idea or clear ambition to work in a particular role. This is again data and stats. However, more women than men had little or no idea about what they wanted to do. It could be when they start off, it could be mid-level careers, senior careers, but it is also observed that a large part of this lack of clarity happens under the age of 30, you know, for women necessarily. And if you're kind of unsure of where you want to head at that age, then it kind of, you know, only, it kind of broadens that gap towards reaching where you want to reach. So I would leave you with this tip that the first job in your life is to find what you're passionate about, and that will kind of set your path towards what you want to do. The third thing, very, very important, which is to build an identity for yourself, which many people call a personal brand, and also to network heavily. And this again seems to be very different between men and women. So it is important for you to meet people inside and outside of organizations. And you may say, today in the current circumstances, how do we do that? I think we are meeting online today via this Web Samvad. And this itself is a networking event. We can connect to the 50, 60 people who are attending this. You're connecting, you can connect to me, you can connect to Raghu and the rest of the world. So you have to take advantage of these networking events and not only connect, but in many ways nurture these connections. Okay, and that's what is going to pay off, you know, as you kind of, you know, move on and you want a specific thing in your career ladder. Your network can also be a source of ideation and innovation. And that is what Anita Arjun Das here is saying. And if you look at it, while her biggest job, as I've already said, she was MD and CEO at Mahindra Life Spaces. She was the first woman and youngest leader to be inducted into the executive board. But she resigned the Mahindra Group to pursue her interest in development and social sector. And today she is, you know, associated with the Kriya University. So are you going to say that she came across a glass ceiling and hence she didn't move on from there? I think, you know, it is probably the ambition that she had for a holistic life, and then she, you know, moved on to do what she wanted to do. But she clearly says, and I also will vouch for this, you have got to have a fantastic network, a network of people that you can tap into and who will tap into you, and you both together can grow. The other thing, and this most of the time kind of, you know, women speak about it more than men, is about having a balancing act. Work-life balance, work-life integration, whatever you call. And we've heard enough of Indra Nooyi stories around it, right? So I always tell people that you need to ensure that your work, your life, which could be your home, which could be your me time, which could be your spiritual, you know, aspects that you want to kind of hone is all integrated. And the most important thing here is learn to ask for help, right? It is absolutely okay. You can be absolutely shameless, and you have to go and ask for help. So even as we are speaking at this webinar today, will definitely go on till 8 o'clock. I know that. Dinner time for my mother-in-law at home is 7:45, and today's dinner at home is chapatis, right? So I will not be able to, step out and make those chapatis. So I had some difficult decisions to take. One is I first went and asked my daughter, and my daughter said, I am in an important meeting and I cannot come out of that meeting. So then, I had to go and ask my husband, and between my husband and daughter, I've kind of convinced them that for me, this is important. For my daughter also, that's important, but I am addressing a larger audience and an external audience. So maybe yours is an internal meeting. So maybe step out for 10 minutes, make some chapatis, and then get back. Ask for help every time, anytime. You don't have to be a superwoman. And Indra Nooyi is a fantastic example where she says that every day you have to make a decision about whether you're going to be a wife or mother or what. And you have to co-opt a lot of people to help you. And it's not like, a thing done for a year. It is a day-to-day thing, and everyday things are going to be different. And you kind of, see how you manage the situation, but you have to do that. The other thing that happens with women is what is called as an imposter syndrome, and may also happen with men. That's more pronounced with women, where they don't necessarily claim their achievements. They feel that they have actually not achieved anything. And if somebody is calling them out and saying, hey, you did a great job, they kind of feel that I'm an imposter. Somebody has done me a favor, hence I am where I am, but I'm not necessarily achieved. So I am a great fan of Apura Purohit, and she always talks about this, where we minimalize our achievements, right? We kind of, here she says, if somebody is paying you a compliment, you will say, oh, I don't think I really did much, and you will give credit to the team and everybody else around you, but not take any credit for yourselves, which is not going to help, one, your mindset to move on, because every day you're battling with yourself to say, hey, am I ready? Am I good? Maybe, somebody will see through it that I'm not yet ready, etc. So the only way to get over this is self-talk. And the research here, again, it says that men will put up their hand for any opportunity even when they are 60% ready, while women will want to be 100% ready. And let me tell you, by the time you get 100% readiness for yourself, that particular role would have been taken away by somebody, another man or a woman. And hence you'll have to now look for another opportunity. Again, you're not 100% ready, so you will continuously work towards becoming 100% ready, and you will never reach that. So go for it. You be 60, 70%, whatever that, kind of is needed. I think an 80-20 rule really works well, because 20%, 30% of the stuff you're going to learn as you progress. And today's situation with the COVID, I think we are all learning on an everyday basis. There's nothing that we know, nothing that we can predict. We just have to kind of head on, get into it and see how we figure things out. So do not minimalize your strengths. Do not maximize your weaknesses. This research says, again, this is contrasting to, what men do. So stop worrying about your flaws, concentrate on your strengths, and work on building them. And that gives you immense self-confidence and everyday self-talk. Talk yourself to say that I can do it, I am good, and I'm going to achieve what I set out to achieve. One of the most important things which forever is important and more so important today's day is invest time into learning. Always keep moving the goal post, okay? So we all usually kind of get comfortable at some point in time in the roles in the organizations that we are in. And sometimes we tell ourselves that if we move out of it, we are actually doing a disservice to the team, disservice to the organization, because everything now depends upon me. How can, life go on for them if I moved on? It doesn't matter. Life will go on for everybody, and you also need to move on. So for which, if you have to grab the next opportunity, you have to continuously keep learning. Now, of course, here is a quote from Irina Ghosh, who heads Microsoft, but you can do courses which come from all these universities. You can also do a daily amount of reading up, There's enough and more material available online today, and you don't have to necessarily go and get certified, but it is continuous investment into learning about what's happening around you today, which is where you kind of, also broaden your gap if you're not invested into your learning. So stay relevant, take on courses, take up projects that give you an opportunity to do something else. Every learning you acquire is a milestone, okay? It's not a finish line. So you have to continuously move the goalpost and keep moving on. And finally, I would say that it's your career, okay? And you have got to own it. And you have to run your race at your own pace. Don't compare it with the rest of the world to say she achieved, he achieved, and in 10 years, 20 years, whatever it is. It's your career, it is your ambition, and you're going to decide what you want to achieve by when, and you have to own it and run that race. Like Sharon Sandberg, CEO of Facebook, says, if you're offered a seat on a rocket ship, you don't ask what seat it is, you just get on, and then you see, where you reach from there. It's always good to be aspirational. It's always good to be ambitious, but it is not a race with anybody or against anybody. It is for yourself. I don't think you win or lose. You're just moving. And another quote that I would like to talk about now is it's a marathon, right? A career is like a marathon. It's not a sprint. So kind of have that large ambition for your holistic life and keep moving. And some of the things that I spoke about in the last few slides are some aspects which are different. Our women look at it a little differently, or these might be a few things that pull women down as against the men. And if you kind of, and you to decide whether you do all of them at a particular time, you do a few of them at a particular time. It's for you based on, where you want to go when. But some tips that I thought I would leave you with before handing it over to Raghu.
Thank you so much, Neerja. Great summary of the whole idea of glass ceiling and what it actually means and what are some of the things that they need to do. Raghu, it seems all to be falling in the hands of the leader, the women leader. It all seems to be in their hands. Every one of the things that Neerja spoke about all seems to be doing with the inner drama that's being played out, and how are they looking at the context in which they're operating. Great to hear from you.
Yeah, Neerja has put out a large canvas. So what I'm going to do is to take only a few things and talk about a couple of them. Hopefully it will help to illuminate the whole thing. Now, see, one of the things that I have found working with people all across the board is the inability of people to distinguish between a dream and a fantasy. Now, what I mean by this is that the fantasy is a kind of, I can become this, I can do that, kind of a thing, without really understanding what my gifts are. Right? Now, most of the issues and problems that I find with people, men and women, when they come to a certain level of the organization, yeah, I think you can go up to a certain middle level in an organization without having figured out what is your passion, without having figured out what's your real dream. Just because you're competent to a certain extent and you're fairly obedient to your boss, you can move up to a certain level in an organization. Now, moving beyond that level, you have to be able to differentiate between fantasy and dream. And it's unfortunate that these two words are very confused. So every management book will say, if you don't have a dream to become a CEO, something is wrong with you, type of a thing, which I think is a very wrong message. Yeah. So dreams are really a very profound ability to listen to oneself and say, what is my real capability? What are my gifts? Right? And then can I invest in these gifts? right? There are three very interesting words that Gandhiji has used and other people, Sarvodaya people and all have used, which is, the first word that they use is swatantrata. So is my thinking independent? Right? If my thinking is conditioned, I will start getting into fantasies. I will start defining things that are important for my life in terms that are not relevant to me. Right? The second is swabhiman. Okay. And here again, unless I have swatantrata in my thinking, my self-worth will start being defined not by me, what my intrinsic capabilities are, but by other things and other frameworks. And then the third word that is used, which is very important, is swadharma. And swadharma means simply, what am I gifted with? What is it that I can uphold? What is it that I can enliven in my life? What can I enliven in other people's lives? Right? The problem is that the discovery of these three fundamentals for a life which is meaningful is fraught with difficulty. Right? And my feeling is also, and this is my experience, when people understand how to free themselves and their thinking, how to create their own basis for self-worth, and have a good understanding of who they are, all kinds of things shift. Yeah, there's a very good friend of mine whose real wish was to be a yoga teacher and so on. Very talented person. He got into an organization, into a bank, decided to just not waste his time on a career move, became the head clerk of the training division. He was so talented, he could take anybody else's class if somebody didn't come. But because he was the head clerk and he was in the union, he could take time off whenever he wanted. So he quietly used his position, went to the streets and taught people self-worth and many of these things. I think it's a very successful person. He chose his own ceiling. He chose how to deal with his entirety of his life, which I think is a very important thing, right? The second thing is, see, there's a lot of I mean, this man-woman dichotomy always bothers me, yeah. Right? Now, I didn't want to get into business. I wanted to be an artist. Okay. Even now, my heart is not in business. Right? There were circumstances which pushed me into getting into business. There were business losses in our family and all kinds of things. So I got into it. I'm very good at it. I have turned around many organizations, but still my happiest moments are not being so-called business leader. My happiest moments are when I can get back to something artistic, right? And then what happens also is that in every organization above a certain level, there is politics, there is fight for power. Yeah. And as many men find themselves inadequate to play this game as women do. Men give themselves different sets of excuses, and the men who live allow themselves to be ruthless and screw up organizations with their ruthlessness, which is not leadership. So we have to look at this whole question in a little more holistic way, right? And I know a lot of very talented people who have decided not to get into this fight. There are people whose fantasy was that they could get into the fight and win, and when they lose, give all kinds of excuses, right? And there are people who fight and win who actually are only talented in fighting and winning. And unfortunately, many organizations don't know how to differentiate between real talent and capability of a person to take a leadership position and distinguish it from people who know how to fight the fight. So you fight, you get into a position, in peacetime, everything is okay. Because the organization is actually not run by the leaders. The organization is run by thousands of operating people. When the crunch comes, okay, that's when all these hollowness in the organization shows up. So organizations that make the shift from one crisis to another, which really grow, are organizations which have a great deal of honesty and ability to really find out what is talent and deal with it. Yeah. And most intelligent organizations don't care who that person is who's talented. They always put the organization first, the growth of the organization first, and these considerations later. Yeah. So at one level, I'm saying an organization which has these kind of glass ceilings, which have these kind of, which in a peacetime can play these political games, ought to die when a crisis comes and be replaced by organizations which understand merit, which know how to look at real quality of people and not get caught with all these strange frames, yeah, which are actually extractive, which are not good business ideas at all. So if you go into the life cycle of any really good organization, you'll find that they have this capability of understanding real talent, and they're able to spot these game players and remove them from the scene. And they also create real tests, conditions for peers to come through. Okay, there's a lot more to it than what I'm able to say right now. But it's like in cricket or in any game, nah? You have to put these guys into the field and see how they play. They might have great talent at the Ranji Trophy level, but if you have to get to the next level, you put them into the test and see what happens, right? And there are many little tests that happen, and organizations that allow real talent to emerge out of these battles are the ones that survive, are the ones that really grow. And people who can't do it and who are keeping leadership positions alive and filling it up for reasons that have not got anything to do with talent will sooner or later pay the price. Yeah, so there's a reality to what is happening to women. There's a price that is paid by women. I'm not denying that at all. But equally, these organizations also pay a price because they allow a certain understanding of management and human relationships, which is adharmic to operate, which is why they allow this kind of a masculine fight, kind of a, just sheer fight for power is not leadership. The ability to discover how to grab a seat is not leadership. Leadership is something completely different, right? And this is why we keep talking about the archetypal energies and so on. Yeah, the male stereotypes of leaders, I mean, half the people, 90% of the people who are called leaders in my framework are not leaders. Just because you're sitting in a position and it's called MD or CEO does not make you a leader. And I think when you realize this, and when you realize that it takes something else, which is intensely human at one level and intensely meaningful in a certain context of serving the customer and so on, really understanding that is leadership, not the name plate that you're sitting under. Every good organization, when there's a crisis, will only bet on the person who's really competent. If they don't do that, it's suicide.
Thanks, Raghu. Thanks, Neerja. One of the questions, Raghu, and I think it'll be the question that Sunita asked is an interesting one. The question that Sunita asked is an interesting one.
Which is?
The question about, is this idea of glass ceiling all in the mind, and what is the kind of inner drama which is being played out in the mind of women when she's dealing with all of this in organizations? Probably is one of the things that we could speak a little bit more about.
What I'm saying is yes and no. Okay, yes, because there's a lot of politics in organizations and a lot of frameworks through which organizations are looked at, which we talked about last time, stereotypes. Right? Half the stuff that goes around today saying this is what is leadership and this is leadership capabilities has no relevance to what I have discovered when I've gone into organizations and worked with people. Okay, the most nicest people who have sharp understanding of the context and a sharp understanding of technology have proved much better leaders than so-called, these Bhima types and whatever, right? So the current stereotypes of leadership, I think, is bunkum. Okay, because it values war over peace. It values extraction over real creation, right? And I'm more and more convinced that going forward, only organizations that can really value creation, which I'm calling the dharmic type of organizations, can succeed. Okay, the reality is we are at the edge of all kinds of crises. We're at the edge of environmental crisis. Within 10 years, India is going to have a huge water crisis. Okay, it's all already happening, but people are not taking care. Right now, given the fact that all of these realities are around, if organizations keep playing the old war games, right, not only are they going to crash, they're going to bring the world down along with them. Yeah, this is a time to really relook and say, what will create a sustainable world? Right, we are at a serious crossroads, and I wish more and more people would see this. And when you come to a serious crossroad, you have to throw out man, woman, this, that, all this kind of stuff. Right, some of the greatest of the warriors in India, right, Rani Bai Holkar, many of these people were women, man, at a time when it ought to have been even more difficult for women to take on leadership. Na? So what allowed them to be leaders? A crisis. So any sensible set of people will hand over leadership to a person who's got real competence in the crisis point. And at those points, if you're still holding on to glass ceilings and other ceilings, it's suicidal. That's the differentiation I'm making. So it is real. It's real in organizations which don't understand real leadership and which are playing other games. Organizations that really understand merit, which really want to serve the best to the customer and so on, yeah, will have the heart to go above these. These differences exist. Political games do exist, but they always find a way of going above it. That's the difference between great organizations, in my mind, and organizations that are making it because of conditions that are not really because of their leadership.
Sure.
Yeah, you can be lucky. You can get onto the elevator at the right time and make a lot of money. But then when the crisis comes, that's what differentiates. No?
Absolutely.
And I'm not saying when the goings get tough, the tough get going. I'm not saying that. I'm saying when the times get tough, real leaders get going. It may not be the tough guys. They might sometimes be the most compassionate guys.
Sure. Thank you, Raghu. Great. So what we'd like to do now, in keeping with the spirit of the way our contemplative conversations have been structured, we'd like to, we've got you already formed into breakout rooms. You will get an invite saying, please, you've been invited to join breakout room 1, 2, 3, 4, or 5. So please join, accept the invitation, and please join your respective breakout rooms. We'll spend about 10 minutes in total. Within your breakout room, having heard Neerja and having heard Raghu speak, having heard some of the reflections from earlier as well, within your group, we would like you to discuss, are there things which got evoked in you? Are there some insights that you gathered? Is there a question that popped up? Is there an experience that got touched? Is there something you'd like to come and share with us? At the end of 10 minutes, we will automatically, in fact, get you back into the main room. And then we will spend 2 to 3 minutes per group, and we'll then reflect together. And I'd like you to, in fact, identify one spokesperson per group who can then pretty much summarize what the discussions were within the group and share with the larger group. And then we'll discuss in a larger group what are some of the things that came up. Neerja and Raghu will then share their perspectives on some of the questions that you might have as well. Right? So, Shireen, are we ready with the breakout rooms?
Yes.
Yeah, so
I'm opening
request you to please, yeah, we are opening all the rooms. Request you to everybody in. Check, we have 12 participants. We have the rest of them yet to join us. Okay, good. So we're ready to start. Welcome back again to this discussion. So we'll go, the way we'll go through it is we'll go group by group. And then within each group, if you can share your thoughts and reflections, and then we'll take it from there. So can we start with group 1? Who's the spokesperson for group 1?
Yeah, so we haven't chosen a spokesperson. I think we're about to do it now. Wondering, would you like to take this on?
Speak up. That's one of the things we always tell
Correct.
the women.
Geeta there?
Yeah. I'm sorry, I missed my name being called out. So I think
you have been volunteered.
I have been actually, yes. So the thing is that we weren't able to, I mean, not everybody's reflections and thoughts came through, but one came out very strongly is that there are a lot of questions that have got raised in the very way we have, created our own, how do we look at whether it is women, whether it is how they respond to organization, whether there exists a glass ceiling in reality or in perception. And also what, some people mentioned that experiencing this whole, discrimination or the bias that happens to women in the organization. So it was a mixed bag, but I think broadly, everybody was, I'm speaking a lot from my own biases that this is a reality. The numbers speak for itself in terms of where women are. And it's also got to do with the load of socializing that women do go through, as well as the men and what is expected. organization structures per se itself are also very, very, created in such a way that it is not really very enabling for women to be able to, reach out for what they need rather than they have to fight for it or grab it or, work very hard in spite and despite. So I think those were some of the issues. And in case I'm missing out on any key point, please do bring it forward. But I think there was a kind of in a way of, let's say, a status quo in terms of whether it's really a perception or is it a reality. I think that is something. And what is also important is if this has to shift, as I think, I'm sorry I came in much later, but what Raghu said is that if things have to move and people come into the survival, how does one survive and move? And who are the people who are going to take that lead? I think the very important question for organizations and leadership and individuals is what is in it for me? And if I have struggled with this, that if one cannot, align to what is it that is going to be, and therefore what are the consequences in the short term or the medium term, it is actually very, very difficult for, breaking or shattering the glass ceiling, as one would say. Can anybody like to add from our group if missed out on anything? Emma?
No, what I had said in the beginning was that my observations and experiences say that I don't think there's a glass ceiling in terms of gender biases, but definitely the personal biases that leaders carry. It could be against a male or a female, but personal biases do play a role when it comes to promotions, etc., in the organization, where it comes to favoritism and things like that, where real potential and capabilities and performances sometimes are ignored, and favoritism plays a role. So my experience and observations account to saying that there is no gender bias-led glass ceiling, but definitely leader biases-led glass ceiling.
I think sometimes it's also a personal choice. Like in my example that I spoke about, it could be a personal choice that, you don't see any gender bias, you don't see anything like not recognizing your performance, but yeah, it could be your own personal choice that you have decided not to move forward in your career or look forward for.
I think your connection, Bharti, was not so. Was a lot of disturbance in the week. I know if many of our participants heard it. But...
Vivek, is there time for one more? Go ahead, Bharti.
Yeah.
Now, I was saying, can you hear me?
We're not able to hear you. There's like a lot of disturbance. Yeah.
Okay. Sorry, I'm not sure if it's my connection. You can go ahead. You can proceed.
Yeah. Yeah. If you can send us a text, then I can read out the question as well, and we can continue.
No, that was not a question. Basically, what I was trying to say is that it could be a personal choice. It may not be a gender bias, or it may not be some kind of, not reviewing your performance or not recognizing your performance, but it could be a personal choice too.
Okay. Whatever little we could make out, you said it's a question of personal choice. It's not so much about the other things that are there as part of it.
Yes, right.
Okay.
Right.
Sure.
Right.
Great. Thanks. Anybody else would like to add?
Yeah, I'd like to sort of, one observation, reflection is that, the narrative somehow, I get the fact that, that women are really kind of, in some places, struggling to find the place, to make the place, to invest in their careers, to invest in their skills, competence, and at times it's a real struggle. I feel that somehow also this kind of investment kind of comes across as a kind of an absorption, in an absorption with one's own kind of, furthering and personhood and so on. To me, it comes across as also at times as kind of being kind of preoccupied with one's own, which I feel is fair enough, because in some senses it's fair enough.
Yeah, shall we move on to the next group?
Yeah. Group 2. Anybody from group 2 would like to share? If you're not identified as spokesperson, it's fine. Anybody, please feel free to share.
Yeah, this is Lakshmi here.
Yeah, sure, Lakshmi, go ahead.
Yeah, so there was a sharing about it. It doesn't have to be to become a man for the factor of success. So that is kind of another reinforcement which was coming from the group. And also there were a few reflections which I also shared about how certain things touched me when Raghu spoke about 90% are still not leaders, and how intensely human and intensely meaningful will make those changes. So I was also, I'm still left with the thought of how to make make it more meaningful and to create more that sustainable world. So what is my part in it? So that's what the thoughts which I'm left with right now.
That's leadership thinking.
Yeah, I'm really touched by what you said. So it's still with me alive. Thank you for that.
Thanks, Lakshmi. Anybody else? Group 2.
Hi, this is Rajesh here.
Hi, Rajesh. Yeah.
Hi. So, in fact, when I was listening to what Nirja was sharing, it left me with a deep thought of what is the role I have played in various relationships I have, whether it's a relationship with my sister, with the relationship with my mother, and left me with a deep thought of what is the role I'm playing now. So it left me with a lot of reflection, and that's what I shared with the group.
So I'll just quickly add on. I think we discussed beautifully in the group also. I missed that point there. To me, gender is not a filter at all for thinking anything or for doing anything. To me, it's really nature versus nurture for any person, where that person is coming from. I see many insecure men also around. I see many strong women also around. It is really there are ages old stereotypes which have been attached to gender based roles, but I feel if anybody is able to stand up to them and just challenge them, it's really possible to do away with them in our own small way, in our own houses, starting there, and then of course office and so on. I take inspiration from it comes from very unusual places also. So I think a couple of days back, I was seeing Milind Soman's mother, who is 80-year-old. She was doing push-ups on Instagram. There was a video about that. I don't know if I'm half as good as her when I'm 80, I'll be very happy. Gender, being male or female or whatever, doesn't matter to me. I was seeing yesterday the interview of Prajakta Kohli, who is the youngest YouTuber and the most successful at it. She's been nominated as Creator for Change.
If you can, everybody else can be on mute. Mridul, please go ahead. Sorry.
Yeah, so I was listening to interview of Prajakta Kohli. She's one of the youngest YouTubers. She's been nominated, I think, Forbes 30 under 30 and whatnot. Her views are so inspiring. She says, gender is not a filter to me at all. And comedy is one space where women are just not there, even today. The stand-up comedy is such a difficult place to be in. And she says, there has never been a filter where she says, should I crack this joke being a woman or not? Or should I do something else? Or can I be a stand-up comedian or not? It's very, very inspiring. I think it's something unrelated to the discussion that we were.
No, it's very related, Pradul,
But
very related.
I think inspiration comes from very, very unusual places. And these were the two recent ones, which I thought I'll share with the group.
Great.
And I think it goes back to what we said. I mean, you should know what you're passionate about. Do
That's
you
right.
and nobody else, right? It is you who defines that. And Prajakta might have defined it for herself at whatever age, and she doesn't care in the right sense, doesn't care about what happens around her, and she's achieved what she wanted to achieve. And of course, that's inspiration for others. So that's the starting point. What is your ambition, for lack of any other better word than saying ambition, passion, whatever that is, the goal? Figure that out for yourself and then kind of move on.
Thanks, Mridul. Anybody else would like to share or add on to what Mridul and Rajesh said? Okay, good. So can we go on to group 3, please?
So I think before we, hi, I'm Chaitali. So
Hi, Chaitali.
Before we figured out who should be the spokesperson, the group suddenly got dismantled. And I saw myself all alone in the group after some time. So I'm guessing all of us had the same experience. But I'm just going to start, and then the rest of you can also kind of please join in wherever you think I've missed out. So some of the reflections that we had as a group were, one was what Nirja said, right? What is ambition? It could be you want to be a CEO, or you just want to chase your dream, and whatever your dream is, self-reflect and get some clarity on it, I think, as with time, and understand what's the dream I want to chase. Could be non-corporate, could be corporate. And then we spoke about the glass ceiling and felt that these limitations could be two-dimensional. One is that you're fighting your own demon, and the other could be the external world, right? You may just say that I had influences like that which made me think of that I have limitations. I have lack of confidence, or I have lack of skill. And then talking about skill, one of the ladies spoke about how we really need to work on our skill so that it brings in confidence, and then we are able to fight that internal demon very well. So really focusing on our skill, developing our skill. And then I think Urvi spoke about, she wanted to know more about this holistic view of leadership. Like, how can I be an emotional leader, yet be objective about what I want to convey, or be objective about, the numbers, and be objective about the achievements, and but yet have a good connect with my people. So she wanted to know more about that. Anything else? Anybody else from the group who wants to add in, please?
I believe, Chaitali, most of it was covered by group 1 and 2, most of the points. But I wanted to thank Raghu and Nirja. This is a wonderful, I missed the first part, but I have really enjoyed being part of it. And Raghu, your 3 words, Swatantrata, Swabhiman, and Swadharma, very nice. I have not come across these words before, but
no, these are not my words. Yeah, these words have been around.
I know, but used
from
together
long before the independence. These 3 words got us the independence, by the way.
Yeah, I mean, on a leadership context being used, and I think independent thought process is something I struggle with all the pressures that are there around. And I feel most of the team, luckily I have a different gender ratio in my team. I have 60% women working for me. And I feel most of them go through this, and that's something, how to overcome, develop an independent thought process while being pulled in different roles and directions. That would be really helpful to know.
A point that, came in my mind when I forget the name of the person who spoke before you, Saroja, Chaitali, I think, was about in today's world, we are hearing so much about layoffs and, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. There was this letter from the Airbnb CEO in terms of how they approach the layoffs. Most of the companies are doing whatever they are doing. So it is a tough decision. And, leadership is also about taking those tough decisions. You can't just say that, okay, fine, so many people are impacted, so shouldn't I? You have to take decisions. But the way you communicate it, you stand over there, or in this case, maybe an email went out or over a Zoom call, the empathy that comes across, which is real, you can sense it, you can feel it. Even I'm not an Airbnb employee, but when I read that, I can definitely realize that there was some thought process and there is some reason cited in the communication in terms of what's going to happen next. That's leadership. I think that probably stems from the fact that if you have that, you can move on and, kind of go across any crisis. And again, not gender-based. So those are the elements of leadership. In this case, it might be empathy. Versus so many other organizations who have laid off and we see them in the news for all the wrong reasons, right?
I just wanted to share one thought. There's a new program on Bill Gates called Inside Bill's Mind, and it is all to do with what he has done on the social side of things, especially the first on toilets, sanitation. I think that is worth watching.
Thank you.
Thanks. Can you move, just a little mindful of time, so if we can move on to group 4, please.
Hi, this is Renosha.
Hi, Renosha.
Hi. So yes, this time I was in group 4 and we did have a great conversation. So I just want to, summarize it with 5 points. One is, I just finished college before 2 years and I've started working in a corporate company. And yes, my glass ceiling is sometimes I break it and sometimes I build it on my own inside my head. It feels so scary. I want to be an entrepreneur and all that, but then, wait, I want to spend my time with my kids as well. So it's partly the glass ceiling is breaking and then I build it on my own head. That's number one. And yeah, there was my friend Winty who has a 5.5 years old son. And she said, she said that she's still feeling hard to find out what her true dream is. She's 45 now and she has a kid and she is still figuring out what her dream is. And we had Soumya and she said that when we have one ambition, we should bend everything else for that one and chase our dreams and attain it. And yeah, we had Shivakumar who said that, sometimes when we are trying to chase these dreams, we often find ourselves being more anxious and restless. And we have to kind of figure out a balance between the present and the dream that we are chasing, because sometimes desire could be more stressful as well. And Raki said that she loved the 3 things mentioned by Raghu Anandanarayanan: the independent thinking, self-worth, and the third one is what is our gift. So yeah, that's it.
Thank you so much, Renosha.
So this is Soumya.
Yes.
May I take a few minutes?
Please.
So Raghu, I have listened to you in one of the Kineji's leadership workshop, the Pandava Mandalas. I did a 2-day workshop, and to be very honest, in the last maybe few years, that's the only training session that I loved. Sometimes what happens is when you are in middle career, you tend to attend a lot of sessions and you hear the same thing in a different version from different leaders. So I generally don't attend any of these webinars because I'm actually overfed of motivational messages.
Yeah.
So Neeraja, maybe knowing I was part of ANZ as well, and I worked with one of the senior most leaders, Pankajam. So the moment I saw Kunerji in her WhatsApp status, I said, I'm going to be there because I'm going to listen to Raghu. So one thing that I am very, very grateful on, just not for Raghu here, is the other men here who are the real champions for change. Although the other women here, we talk about gender, it exists. We are men and women in this world. There is no change. And each of us have a different thinking. Some of us are more empathetical and some of us are not. Some of us are more ruthless and some of us are not. So there is no one scale that fits all of us, even in the same gender. So I still feel there is a gender difference. If it is not, we should have got 50-50% in our workplaces. There are societal decisions that each of us take. At least we all are very privileged to have this call in the prime time, Neeraja said. There are out there a lot of people who have foregone their career to take care of their family. So we are not yet same. It is still time. We are all, we are all privileged few. But one thing that I see is there are a lot of male change champions here emphasizing and advocating this topic more and more, which is very, very progressive. And we will just be right there. And we will have a lot of people in the workforce breaking all their barriers and come to the workforce and be independent. We are yet not there. So I'm very, very thankful, Raghu, for doing this for us. And for every one of you who are here. I do not know you personally by names, but I know Neeraja. But I'm very, very happy to be here and feel really energized by hearing the discussions from the other side of the participants. You know, that's motivating. And thank you for that. Worth spending my evening here. Unlike I generally want to avoid such sessions, but I'm very happy. And thank you very much for really being with us. It takes some time. We will be there, but we need all of you to be along with us. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Soumya.
And even adding up to Soumya, I attended the 5 Seats of Power session, and my instructor was from Gurjian. I forgot her name, unfortunately. I'm sorry. Maybe someone could get it. Okay.
Apurva, I think.
Either Apurva or Bhavna.
Yes, I think it was Apurva. I love Apurva. She was, the moment I saw her, I was like, oh my God, she's so enlightened. Look at her face.
I'll tell her. Thanks for giving me a nice little stick to beat her with now.
I think every instructor, I had Sharbari, nothing less.
That's
you get
really
the aha
mean,
moment. I get the aha moment. The reason why I attended is because of that.
And when we were asked to put our phones inside an envelope, I was like, okay, I will put my phone inside envelope for Apurva. So that day was a day in which my brain was really getting rewired, and I was without my phone after a very long time. So thanks for that. Thanks for coming up with the idea.
Thanks, Renusha. Thanks, Soumya. Group 5, please.
Good evening. Hi, everybody. This is Jyoti Varma here from Group 5, Breakout 5. So before I start off, I would quickly introduce my team people. So we had Sukhinder, we had Sai, we had Shobhita, and also we had Priya and myself, Jyoti Varma, on this. So we were able to kind of curtail within the hour that we had given. And I think by default, they said, since I was making notes of it, you should be talking about it. So here I am to talk to you guys about it. So the few things that we kind of discussed is the first one that Gwenthal Sukri, she said observation mode, a glass ceiling, not only for women, it was there for the men also. And the other person is on the focus, and it was basically perception. There are challenges for women and there are challenges for men also. And it also needs to be taken so men also can move into a role of compassion and empathize, so they can move from a soft mode to a hard mode, whatever. So it's not applicable only for women, it's there. So in principle, they liked Raghu's talks and Neeraja's, whatever the highlights were given. Then we had Shobhita, who said Neeraja's women perception where she said to learn to take credit for what you have given, not to give away. And also the message that she took back was basically a personal life, not being a superwoman. That's something which resonated. And she said, I need to try hard to do that. And then we had Priya, where she said it was very nice to accept vulnerability as it is and have the courage to stand up for it, kind of a thing. She liked what Raghu said. And in fact, somebody in the session, apparently, I think I got in a little late. So at that point, there was someone who was a child noise. She said, no, that's okay, let it be, kind of a thing. So she liked it, saying that it's okay to be there as such. So that was the main things as such. I hope I've not missed anyone on this. And finally, on me, I feel it's all about creating a brand. If you create a brand for yourself and you believe in you, any ceiling is approachable, and you will be. The way you see yourself is what others will see you. The moment you see yourself as an insecure person, the other person would see that. And so while recapping onto this and giving a few, since we have few minutes, I would like them also to express anything that they missed out on it. I would just like to leave a question here to all the people who spoke. Personal belief and personal thing is, yes, women are getting empowered. Guys are telling, yes, women has to be empowered. They need to go out and work. They can enjoy, they can drink, they can do everything. But are we training the men to handle the empowered women? Is that happening? Are the men enough ready to take the empowered women? Is my question out to all three of you there. Think about this, maybe in this session, or you could have another session on this, and I think you will have an amazing mix and things on it. So over to Vivek, to you, where you could take it on. Thank you for giving this opportunity, group mates. And I think I've done justice. Out to you guys.
Yeah, thank you so much, Jyoti.
Yeah, my pleasure.
Yeah.
So I'm going on mute. If anyone else wants to add something from my team, they can go ahead. Thank you.
Sure, please, thanks. Anybody else would like to share?
I just would like to add, can you hear me?
Yeah, please, sis. Please go ahead. We can hear you.
Yeah. So I think, what I've realized is, I'm still discovering is that it's not, the professional and the personal are not so disconnected. They're connected. So when we talk about roles, or it could be related to caste or gender or spiritual roles, any role, there's no difference. And I feel, I was a very, very strong feminist in the beginning, but I'm beginning to realize that there is strength in taking up different kinds of shades of the self, shades of masculinity, shades of femininity all through your life. So, while we celebrate certain kind of people, certain kind of women and men, it should not be around success models. I find it really problematic at times. I also feel that there are shades that you must celebrate in people, because it's the humanness which makes the whole diversity that we see around us. I think that should be celebrated rather than seeing success models as a framework for getting somewhere. Yeah, that's one thing which I wanted to share.
Thank you so much. And you'd send in some of your comments on chat as well. I was waiting to listen to you. Yeah, thanks. Group 5, anybody else? Can we go to group 6, please?
Sure. So this is Urvashi, and I'm just going to talk on behalf of the team. Group, please add on as you feel relevant. Firstly, I'd like to thank Neerja and Raghu for doing this session. The minute I saw the topic and the minute I saw Neerja, I had to be in the session. So thank you for having the session. Great points covered by both of you all, and a lot of it was thought-provoking, or at least as you guys were speaking, I was thinking of my journey. In the group, some of the things that we discussed, or the questions that we had for the group itself, was ambition, and the example that we just spoke about, the glass ceiling, the salwar kameez example, is that glass ceiling, created by us or the society or both? What is it really? Then we spoke about this whole concept of taking risks, right? All of us know we should take risks, but are we grown up in that environment, and are we taught to take risks, and what does it mean to take risks? There is this concept of being scared to fail, and some of us don't know what it means to fail. There's this pressure of being perfect. And then there's also this concept of, progress versus perfection, and, which one do you choose when? Then the question also came up saying, what is failure really, right? Is it, is it bad? Is it just feedback? And how do we really, choose that failure, or how do we see that failure? And then I was very glad for Sridhar to really speak up, because he was giving us an example of a LinkedIn post he recently did, where he was talking about, where he was washing vessels, and he put a post on that, and he got a lot of comments or calls about why you putting on LinkedIn. And the conversation, and that example really brought us to the conversation saying the glass ceiling or the biases that we talk about seem to be existing both for men and women. Seems like, from a women's perspective, we speak out more, but some of the fears, some of the questions that we have, seems like a lot of men also have those questions. So clearly, I think we ended to saying that somewhere it's not gender specific, but there is a lot more to do in the women's space. One question that the group had also was this whole imposter syndrome, where it's about, we don't know how to take the credit. Like if you're managing a team, and if someone came in, and if it was a woman leader and someone came and gave you feedback saying you did a good job, very often we don't know if we should take the credit or give the credit to the team. So how do we really handle that situation? So here are some of the things that came out, but a very good discussion, a lot of thought-provoking questions, so a lot for me to take back. Anything else that the group would like to add?
Urvashi, I think you covered it all beautifully.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Vivek, if I can just, and I don't know if Neerja or Raghu or anybody else in the group, have any thoughts of this whole imposter syndrome. Is there any way that you think we could handle the situation when we're giving feedback? And it's okay if you don't answer it here. We can even take it next time, but just, that's a question that clearly, at least I feel like I would like to get answers to.
One is, yeah, definitely, I think that definitely needs a lot more discussion, but a quick one is what I had put on my slide, which is self-talk, because it is internal. It is not external. Nobody is telling you you're not good or you're good. But they may, but what is driving, is internal to say, I'm not good enough. Like, for example, I will tell you, we did this session today. After I finished talking, I am asking myself, did I do an okay? It comes, okay? It does come, and I'm sure it comes for men too. But then it is for you to kind of keep, telling yourself that it was fine. And if it was not fine, you get the feedback, you take the feedback, and please evaluate the feedback. It's not that, you have to just kind of, like, for example, I do so many sessions. One of my very, very close colleagues and friends told me about a particular session that it was extremely boring. And I was devastated because everybody else who attended that session said it was phenomenal. So do take the feedback, but then also with a pinch of salt and reflect. So do ask the person what, why. And that might be certain context and, something because of which she found it boring. But the point is that it's quick one is self-talk, to say, I'm fine and I've done well and I will move on even if I'm not done well. And we could really look at another session to talk more about it.
Thank you a lot for that.
Raghu, you were going to say something, Raghu? Add to this?
No, something similar to what Neerja was saying. The other side of it, no. Fundamentally, there's nothing wrong with feeling inadequate. You don't have to cover it up. Yeah, all learning begins and continues when I'm okay being inadequate, right? And there's a lot to learn from there, which doesn't mean that I'm not confident, right? So I can state something, and there's a lot more to my knowledge, there's a lot more to my action, whatever, than what I have done. So yeah, what's wrong with feeling that I can improve? What's wrong with feeling that I'm a little inadequate in this? Yeah, some of these Western terms I'm a little worried about. Yeah.
That's a fair point. Thank you.
There's a whole history behind this. This imposter, the word, why it comes and all that. That's got to do with a long history of the way the West looks at masks, looks at theater. It's a whole big thing, right? So we ought to be careful when we are using and taking some of these words without making it our own and giving it our meaning.
Thanks, Raghu. Thanks, Rishi. We've covered all the groups, I guess, and we're pretty much almost 15 minutes above our scheduled time, right? So just a quick, closing comments, if any, from Neeraja and Raghu, and then we'll bring this whole session to a close. Neeraja, any points, anything you want to add?
I will go back to saying that, be yourself. Reflection is absolutely important at every stage of your life, and move on from there based on what you want to do, what you want to achieve, what kind of a holistic life that you wish to lead, and be happy with that. That's about it.
Thank you so much, Neeraja. Raghu, closing comments.
Closing comments. Jai Hind. We've said a lot of things. So, yeah, I agree with Neeraja. Just discover. There's a nice statement from Joseph Campbell that says, follow your bliss. Which basically means, go for Ananda. Whatever gives you Ananda. He's translated that into follow your bliss. I think it's a lovely statement. Don't follow your success. Don't follow somebody else's statement of what is success. Just follow your bliss.
Thank you so much, Raghu, Neeraja. Thanks to all our participants. It's been an absolute pleasure for us at Quinergy to bring these sessions. Like always, this session will be put up on YouTube. The entire recording is there on YouTube, so do please go through it if you'd like to access it. Sherin will send out the links by tomorrow or the day after. Please do write in with your feedback, anything that you'd like us to improve. We're quite happy to discuss that. Yeah, we'll meet again on Monday, same time, same place.
Different questions.
Different questions. And, we had a small breakouts while you were all in a breakout room, just Raghu, Neeraja, and me were having a conversation. And we're going to explore the next session to say what kind of questions come up. And all three of us are going to come in for this session saying that we will take the agenda based on what you come up with those questions. And we're quite happy to work with whatever questions, comments, reflections that you may have. So we're not going to come in with a specific topic like we did in today. But yeah, we're really looking forward to engaging with you. And thank you again. And stay safe.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.